In the late 1970s, documentary film producer Linda Molton Howe heard a first-hand UFO account from her brother, then a military helicopter pilot. With details of the story fresh in her mind, Linda began investigating reports of unexplainable cattle surgery and cattle mutilations in the same areas of reported UFO activity.
One night that fall of October of '75, I had a phone call while I was actually on the floor with a typewriter writing a medical script. And it was my brother, and he was extremely excited. And the first words out of his mouth were, "Linda, a UFO has set down on the base." And I rarely heard my brother speak with such energy. He was a helicopter pilot in '75 at Molton Air Force Base outside of Great Falls. And that particular night, he had been at a wing party when beepers started going off all over. There was an emergency. And the emergency, as it turned out, was that electronic signal equipment had gone off over a missile silo known as Kilo 7 at Malmstrom. And a sabotage alert team was reporting that a football field sized, that'd be 300 feet in diameter, an orange glowing disc was hovering, or stationary, whatever word you want to use, very low to the top of the missile silo. And that it was casting light that was brighter than daylight. My brother said that the sabotage alert team actually had an argument with the command unit saying, "You want us to go closer than where we are," which was a quarter of a mile away, "then you come out here." And that kind of insubordination got people's attention too, that something serious was there at that missile silo. Jets were scrambled. When the jets got above whatever this orange glowing thing was, it blinked out. The sabotage alert team said, "We know it must still be there, it's just disappeared." As long as the jets were there, couldn't see it. The jets were called back on it came. Began to rise and was picked up by radar until it Dopplered off at 200,000 feet. Well, the next day, my brother said that they sent a team out there to investigate that missile, and that they found that the targeting information in the computer head about where the warhead would go in the world had been changed. And the next day, they took out that whole missile and put in a new one. Same time, around the base, ranchers were finding mutilated animals. And my brother had a first-hand conversation with a flight surgeon at Molton Air Force Base in 1975 when a rancher brought in the back of a pickup truck a cow in which the lips alone had been beveled so perfectly and surgically that the flight surgeon talked to my brother about it and said that the tissue of this particular cow had been drained so thoroughly of blood that it was not even red, it was the palest of pink-white, and that he as a flight surgeon had no idea what had happened to that cow. Well, that was '75. The next year, I moved with my family from Boston to Denver. I had a little file on animal mutilations, but the truth was, I really, in my own mind, didn't have any solid connection of thought at all between the animal mutilations and what had happened at Molton with that UFO. To me, in my mind, they were separate issues. I did a whole series of films and studio programs on environmental issues and was working on a program with a crew in the summer of '79. It was actually behind the scenes of a Colorado Shakespeare Festival, as far from this subject as you could get. And my sound man was talking about the fact that there were mutilations happening in the West. And sure enough, I began realizing that the newspapers had more mutilation stories, and I thought, well, I've got to get to the bottom of this. When this phenomenon, the mutilation, started back in the late '60s, I know that there were people who, in the beginning, they took it seriously, even though the rest of the world was saying it might be predator and satanic cult. I guess I find myself in that unusual and unique position of also being one of those people who took the mutilation seriously enough to stick with it long enough that I have found myself becoming an authority in an area that I never would have suspected, the mutilation of animals worldwide. But the carcasses themselves are one of the biggest single bodies of evidence that something highly unusual is taking place on this planet. Mutilations have continued every year in my files. I first started looking into the mystery in 79 to 80 when I did the documentary A Strange Harvest. And the phenomenon was worldwide then. It remained worldwide in stories throughout the beginning of the 80s. We're now 1990. And right here in front of me, I have an article from Associated Press. Cattle mutilations, still unexplained. This is dated August 19th, 1990, Vicksburg Sunday Post, Vicksburg, Mississippi. Here is a story about 2 mutilations in a little teeny place in Mississippi called Guntown. This is 1990. This is right now. One of them, and I talked with the veterinarian, a veterinarian named McMillan in Guntown. Quote, a 500-pound heifer was found in early July with the left ear and 18 inches of skin from its left rib cage cleanly severed. Where the hide had been, a hole was bored through to the beast's heart. And the vet said that he could look right down through a hole in the rib cage and he could see a hole going through the heart.
Do we have any technology that could do that kind of a...
Maybe lasers. Maybe lasers. But the big question is, which contingency of the human community is going to be bothering with a calf in Guntown, Mississippi, with laser equipment that could do this? Current day lasers, if the military has it, fine. But this phenomenon started in 1967. Laser technology was lab bench research then, that year. And yet that first horse that was found in southern Colorado in September of 1967, referred to as Snippy, but the actual name was Lady, that horse had flesh stripped from the neck up. The bones were as clean white as if that horse had laid in the sun for months. A pathologist named John Altschuler, who's been working with me recently, was there confidentially. Didn't let anybody know. He looked at that horse and found that the internal sternum cavity of that horse in 67, all the major organs had been removed. And he said the thing that got him, since he had worked medically on cadavers of human bodies and other animals, including cows, in his work as a medical student, he said there was no blood, there was no presence of fluid, there was no indication there were just dried blood anywhere in the cavity or around that horse. He said how you would remove these kinds of organs and have it be so clean was remarkable to him in 1967. Further, he took some pieces of the mutilator's cuts and took them back to Denver. And under a microscope, he said he could see clear evidence of high heat at the edge of the wounds. This is 1967. 1989, he and I work on getting tissues from 9 mutilated animals in the summer of 1989 from Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. And there was one in December in Idaho, so those were 4 separate states. Under a microscope, he finds the same evidence of high heat cut on the edges of these mutilator cuts. He estimated 350 degrees or above. Well, that clearly excludes predator. And in my own opinion, and with the conversations I've had with law enforcement about the whole issue of satanic cults, I have yet to meet a law enforcement person who privately would say that they thought satanic cults were responsible for this, because there have been too many undercover efforts trying to come up with some satanic cult or somebody who would even give information that a satanic cult was involved with mutilations from Canada, throughout the United States, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Central America, South America, Australia, the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa, parts of Europe. I mean, this is a worldwide operation. And in every single case, the animals basically are treated the same. The same things are missing. An ear is missing, an eye is missing. The jaw is either cut like this and comes down like this, and it comes across like this, and everything is removed. We're talking clean bone on an animal that is still warm to touch, The tongue is always cut in a vertical cut deep within the throat. The genitals of the males are usually removed in an oval that is about that big. The cows with udders, you'll see either something like a square or sort of an oval cut and the entire udder is removed, or isolated teats are removed, or some variation on that theme, and the rectum is cored out. Now that's the basic mutilation scenario, and there's no blood or fluid. Blood being drained. Now that was part of the story in the 70s. There were evidence from both veterinarians and from people who had medical backgrounds who examined some of these animals, and they said that on the basis of the tissue, the muscle tissue, that it would appear that the blood had been so thoroughly drained that the muscle tissue was left a pale pink white. In the 80s, I have been where animals have been found, and I have been with people who have studied them, and I would say it's mixed. Some of the animals, the tissue is red, showing that there's the evidence of blood in the tissue, but that in terms of a cut that is as precise as these are, with no fluid anywhere, that in and of itself suggests that something unusual has happened where these excisions have been made. And further along these lines, how is fluid from bodies of all these animals, how is it being taken so thoroughly that there's no residue of any kind? In 1989, in Arkansas, 5 cows were found in a straight line on one farm. Every single one of them had been mutilated. One of those, and all were pregnant, and one of those, the stomach, had a very clean, very precise, extremely pale pink. It wasn't red, suggesting that blood had been removed from this wound. It was a hole cut in the belly of this pregnant cow, and through this hole, the weight of an unborn calf still in the embryo sac had come out onto the ground. So you're seeing a cow, and the unborn calf is partly in and partly out of the body. When the farmer saw this astonishing and horrifying scene, he called local authorities in the newspaper. Jim Williamson, who's the editor of the Little River News in Ashdown, Arkansas, sent out his associate editor with a camera. She was the first one there, about 5 hours after the farmer had found them. And she said that the outside of the embryo sac, the cow, the soil, everything was dry. But what really got her was that she reached down to touch this embryo sac, and she was taking pictures, and inside this sac she could see no fluid of any kind. What evaporated the embryo fluid also where this calf was found? Those are the kinds of questions that have puzzled a lot of people. Now it's 25 years, we're talking a quarter of a century. This phenomenon is worldwide. It's been going on for decades. There's no one who has ever been arrested.
Cattle mutilations and unexplained cattle surgery continue to this day, unabated around the world.